Hi, I'm in the shed here with Oliver Barnett, who is in South Africa near Table Mountain, where he spends hours every day in nature capturing it. He's a visual artist, and he takes people on a journey through an open relationship with nature, and one which is very, very important that we all engage with and share. Ollie, hi, lovely to have you here. It's been amazing talking to you. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit more, and then we'll get your tip?
Sure. I grew up in the UK, but moved to South Africa 14 years ago. And it was actually around that time I started to experience the difference of my background in England was that I grew up in a garden that felt manicured. And suddenly I was in a place that was incredibly wild. And through visiting Table Mountain National Park and other areas around every single day as a form of ritual, started to enter a conversation that was incredibly inspiring for a visual image making practice. I often use the term foraging photons because that's kind of I'm very much a foraging kind of person, and not necessarily always looking for food, quite often looking for just patterns or textures or colors or little things that I'll sample, and then gather and create artworks from them.
Or tea, as you said earlier.
Or tea. So it's a meditative practice, essentially, which has become a ritual that I do every day, that happens to have a generative result, which would be an image of some kind. So, and it's something I love to do.
And also, yeah, it's very calming for you, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it was actually around that time of arriving here and realizing that my mind functioned in a way that was incredibly erratic. I wasn't able to stick to a particular idea or thought for more than a minute at a time before something else came in, and it was starting to cause me physical problems. It was starting to cause other kind of problems. So essentially nature was the backdrop to try and soothe that, but as time's gone on, it's become more immersive than that. I'm no longer just kind of using Mother Nature to wash away my problems. It's a much more developed relationship now.
Yeah, well, you're washing away other people's problems as well, which is a really well, you're very humble, but it's a really, really amazing path to be led down. You haven't done it in any way on purpose. You've just been a journey.
I mean, it was a way of saying, okay, so are humans predetermined to worship something outside of them? And so nature became the cathedral. So, and as a result, I actually started creating these large sort of forest temples, which I've become a little bit known for. Those are essentially the setting for all of the work I've done since. Really, they're kind of the grounding.
Before I get you actually to tell us your tip, because you know so much about, because you've been immersed for so long. When you describe the forest temple, should we describe it visually to someone, one of your pieces, just so if someone's not watching the video, they can imagine it?
Well, there's many places particularly around Table Mountain, where you have large ravines and with trees kind of climbing up around, and then with deep pools below. And at certain times of day, you can go and sit by these pools and see the reflections of the trees in the water. And I always, part of my upbringing was actually sort of being in cathedrals and not really listening to the sermon, but staring up in a kind of wonder at the architecture. So and the mirroring or the symmetry technique that I adopt quite often was not only a way of essentially replicating sacred architecture. I noticed instinctively that looking at these images my nervous system was calming down. I think I was probably in fight or flight for the first 20 years of my life, and suddenly I found a way of getting out of that into the parasympathetic nervous system, so that it did occur to me then that would also be helpful for others as well as myself. But initially it was a way of saying, okay, so I'm here in my animal body, which I've actually been very cut off from a long time because I've been living up here.
Yeah.
And then the moment you start to give this something to do, i.e. looking for things, making images, that not only opens the heart, but it essentially sort of dilutes a lot of the noise that's going on, because it's so sort of focused on discovering things. I mean, I have learned to meditate a lot since then, but actually what I've learned is that I'm not necessarily one of these people who's supposed to be sitting in lotus for long periods of time. It's actually not my form of meditation. I don't actually think it is for everyone, because it's once you break through with that format, you can actually, there's quite a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, and also there's a lot of tasks that you can do that can put you into a meditative state, just like yours, looking for things, sweeping, anything that's just very simple and repetitive task is just very healing for anyone. So where are you going to come from with your tip for us to relate to nature? You've got so much. I know you've probably got millions of tips. What's the top one for us today?
I was thinking about earlier. There are many, but the tea making ritual which I have started has without doubt become one of the most important aspects of my walk, because I'll start a walk and I'll instinctively start kind of smelling things around me, and I mean, I know most of the plant families. I don't know all the specific details, but I do know that making a tea out of plants is almost impossible to kill you. So that's quite a useful piece of information. Maybe it's specific to this part of the world. I mean, I wouldn't make tea out of hemlock and foxglove and things like that in England, but I'm sure it's possible it's an incredibly enlivening way with connecting with where you are. So that became something of a ritual, was to kind of use my senses to smell my way around the place, and then make a tea from water in the streams. Undoubtedly felt more connected to the place and the environment. So my tip is really to turn your walks in nature into a ritual. Find ritualistic means of spending that time in a way that is utterly in synchronicity with the place.
That goes so well with the theme of, I think people should, although it's a bit prescriptive, should really say, you should spend a non-negotiable amount of time outdoors every day. Make it a ritual. That sounds quite strict, but as you say, you've made 2 hours outdoors a ritual in your life, which has created so much space and peace and flow for you. Now you also do the tea, which is, which if you imagine me go out and you come home with something from the forest, if you can't make it out in the forest, then you're actually bringing that experience home for longer. And even if you leave the leaves on the side and that evening you see them again, you'll connect back to the experience you had. So it's I'm sure it's creating a lot of balance in your life, and I think it's a really good tip.
Well, I've also found some really, really good ones, and there's one particular plant on the mountain which tastes exactly like cucumber. I mean, it's a sort of, it's the most. So when it went a really, really hot day, you wouldn't necessarily think of drinking tea, but it's actually a very good thing to drink on a hot day. This particular cucumber plant, I seek it out, and it's absolutely wonderful.
Oh, amazing. Perhaps you can give us a few names of those things that you find, and I'll put them in the description of the video, so people
like I said, I mean, I do end up.
You're not not a doctor or a scientist. You could put it with a disclaimer.
The fact that it's more about the actual sort of group names of all the plants and things that
I see.
In terms of identification, I think it's important to sort of know your groups, but I don't know all the particular details of them. It's just not how my brain wants to spend its time.
Well, I think your brain's spending its time in a really fascinating way, but it's not only fascinating, it's actually going to be really helpful. And if I can help get the way you think out into the world, and if anyone, it can help other people have, it's affected you both physically and emotionally, but it's also enabled you to have a sort of purpose that helps other people. So hopefully, if more people can hear from you, I mean, you talk really eloquently about you don't talk like a scientist, but you talk like an academic about nature. And so I hope he could hear you in lots of other places very soon, if you're up for collaborating with anyone else who's going to see. Yeah,
totally. No, I was always told that I needed to, that the sort of the words that I apply to the work are important for people to sort of, you know, if one needs to wrap one's head around something, rather than, I mean, even at the show I had recently, people would come in and say, oh, it's a symmetrical landscape. But once they actually hear or suddenly get encouraged to spend a little bit more time with it to see if it sort of has a visceral effect, that was interesting to see how people sort of viewed it differently. So,
yeah, well, they can, I think hearing your voice and the way you experience it is a guide, because you are very much a guide anyway, in terms of for the plants, for you and for other people when they look at your work. I know you said it was surprising to hear what people say they can see, which you didn't even expect them to say. By the way, just as I thank you very much for being here and close off, I was wondering if you had any to hand to show us on the screen, anything.
This one, which is not very well lit, it's the only, I'm still waiting to put a, maybe I can say, I need to.
Oh yeah, we can get a feeling for it.
This chandelier is actually not working right next to it. So, but this is one piece that I have in my lounge.
Coral on the end. Is it a coral?
This is actually a bracket fungus.
Right.
So these grow all through in the forest, sort of the bottom of the mountain. These bluets, which are, so these are very good edibles. These you make a tea from. They're too hard to eat. So they're all things from different sort of parts of the mountain. But
it does actually look like a chandelier in itself in some parts of it.
No, I just need to get a light on it. That's all.
Yeah. Well, brilliant. That's good. I think
usually one gets left with the pieces one doesn't sell at shows. That's just the reality of being an artist.
That's the gift.
But I love that one. So
yeah, it's lovely. It's beautiful. Well, thanks so much for your tip. Again, do you want to just reiterate it in terms of the ritualistic?
Yes. So I mean, I think it's something that's becoming quite popular and trendy, is sort of this idea of turning your life into just one constant sort of flurry of rituals. But it's essentially a way of trying to step into, I mean, human culture has gone through so many different sort of turns over the last 100 years. We've kind of moved away from this idea of the community and the village, who actually kind of share ideas and encourage each person to embrace their unique and individual gifts. So ritual is essentially a way of acknowledging your place in the web of life, and also giving thanks to the host, i.e., the Mother Earth, which is something that we haven't done enough of in the last 200 years. We're essentially coming out of a time where the human body is actually more conditioned for war than for peace. I mean, we've been a kind of, and suddenly I see this sort of enormous potential to embrace an entirely sort of new model for humanity. You know, if we can kind of get through these incredibly hard times.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you. Well, that was again really clear, and I hope this will reach a lot of people. And well done.
Lovely.
With what we're doing. Lovely to speak to you.
Lovely to speak to you.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you for listening to Botanic Shed. We're here to help you build vitality and resilience by deepening your connection to nature. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Botanic Shed, or the website is www.botanicshed.com. My email is hello@botanicshed.com. Do get in touch if you would like to feature on the show or speak to any of our speakers or ask me any questions. Thanks. Bye.